So good day, everyone. So for today's next topic, we are assigned to tackle the CO2, which is to discuss the contribution of performance management system to organizational well-being. So here is our learning outcomes. So first, I will discuss the characteristics of effective performance management, and then I will elaborate the dimensions of performance management. So, proceeding to characteristics of an effective performance management, forward-thinking organizations all over the country and all around the world have come to recognize the importance of performance management to the success of their businesses. So today's progressive leaders, they are establishing systems that reflect an appreciation for the efforts of the employees who are driving the growth of their organizations. So, unfortunately, even the most well-intended or well-known executives can fail to consider the factors that are absolutely critical to the effectiveness of such programs. So there are many different types of performance management systems that can be used within the organizations, but every effective system will include these four characteristics that I will show you. So the first characteristics is it must be fair. So in order for a performance management system to work, those being managed and evaluated must believe that it is fair. So here are the few questions to help us determine if your system is fair. So the first question is, are the employees evaluated against clearly stated goals and objectives that were agreed upon at the beginning of the performance term? So employees are not mind readers. So if you have any expectation that you have failed to communicate, so you should not expect or should expect for it to remain unmet. So the next question is everyone evaluated on a level playing field? So while evaluations for frontline employees and executives will certainly not look the same, so they should be based on the same values and principles. If a score of 3 is deemed as satisfactory, then it must retain the meaning at every level. So additionally, everyone should be subject to the evaluation process regardless of how high they have climbed on the corporate ladder. So the next question is, are evaluations based primarily on objective factors? So, there is always a subjective component to employee evaluation. It should be a very small portion of the overall review. Relying too heavily on subjective assessment leaves the process wide open to allegations of favoritism and discrimination. So, that is the first characteristics. So, it must be fair. So next characteristic is it must be ongoing. So the process cannot consist of nothing more than a 30-minute meeting every once in a while or if it is needed only. So effective performance management includes regular, ongoing communication between the supervisor or the head manager and the employee. So it must leave room for feedback and input from the person being managed. So additionally, the employee must be given open and honest feedback about any issues throughout the process. So an employee should never be surprised by the introduction of a new performance issue at the annual review. So if this happens, the supervisor has failed in his responsibility. So that is the second characteristic, so it must be ongoing. So the third characteristics is it must be carefully documented. So in these times, organizations are very wise to document any and every employee performance issue. So for general performance management, documentation should include the goals and objectives expected of each employee for the performance term. So when it's time for the official annual review, or you can refer back to the document as you explain your evaluations. In the case of a performance issue, documentation should include a detailed overview of the problem. So the expected level of performance and the course of action that is being taken to generate the desired results, including any disciplinary action taken. So all documentation should be dated and signed by both the employee and the supervisor, and copies should be stored in the employee's personal file. So failing to document could leave your organization wide open to wrongful termination of lawsuits, even in at-will employment situations. So you don't want to have to explain why you suddenly fired at a high-performing employee with no documented performance issues, or those employees whom you have strengthened their performance through trainings. So it would be a good insight for others also. So the well-known saying here is, unfortunately, very true. So the quote is, if it's not in writing, then it didn't happen. Or in accounting terms, as we say that, do not assume unless it's stated. So that is the third characteristic. So next characteristics is it must be aligned with organizational culture and values. So this is one of the most common errors when it comes to performance management systems. So one size does not fit all. So a great example of this is the recent trend to implement a 360-degree reviews, which includes an employee being reviewed not only by her supervisor but also by peers and even direct reports if she is or he is a manager. So in the right environment, this system can be incredibly useful. This would include organization with cultures that are very collaborative, embrace the principle of servant leadership, and are open with very high levels of trust throughout the staff. So on the other hand, if you try to implement 360-degree reviews in a culture that is more authoritative, hierarchical, and lacking open communication and trust, sometimes it may cause offending other people or mislead them to a wrong information. So be honest about the culture and values of your organization and design a system that complements what is already in place. So that would be the most common characteristics of an effective performance management system. So the right performance management system can help you cultivate talent and build a strong environment of trust throughout your organization. So take your time, hire any experts, and design a system that will serve not only your business but also the dedicated employees that make it a success. So here are some of the key features or characteristics of effective performance management in organizations. So following are the main features of ideal performance management. So we have first, the managers offer leadership and incorporate performance management with many other aspects of their work. So that employees also realize that their performance directly plays a role in the ongoing success and stability of their organization. So next, we have individual and team responsibilities, and their performance are clearly connected to the accomplishment of program and corporate objectives and the requirements of customers. Next, we have managers offer leadership and incorporate performance management with many next we have individuals and teams have a clear idea of their work, responsibilities, and standards of work expected to them. So the individuals and teams also satisfy the standards of behavior of expected employees. Next, we have the managers must keep track of and appraise the performance of the employees. The individuals and teams must get a regular feedback on performance with regards to program and company objectives. So, like what characteristics number 2, it must be ongoing. So, the relationship between the supervisor and the employees must have an open communication to assess their performance and put inputs for the betterment of the company. Take advantage of the potential of all their employees and develop their skills by motivating individual career planning. So they have to improve and valued performance is identified and must be rewarded. So may it be in the monetary or the existing reward system in the company. So managers must attempt to improve poor performance and deal with continuing poor performance. Setting up effective and regular communication with employees will allow you to help them determine any training they might need to boost their performance, and will also present you with the opportunity to help in their career development. So there are so many effective characteristics that is present to have an effective performance management, but it will always depend on how the top management will implement it. So for more insight, I will show you a video presentation about this topic.
Let me start with a question. Do you know your team or department's goals? He does. Let me ask you another question. Do you know your organization's goals? She doesn't, and he doesn't either. Chances are, if you don't, you're not alone. In studies I've read over the years, anywhere from 14 to 50% of the people clearly understand their corporation's goals and where the organization is going. So, if you don't know that, you're not alone. After this video, you'll be able to understand the impact of the purposes of performance management and identify design elements that lead to effective performance management. The first one and key, and we've discussed this a little bit before, is alignment. But alignment is crucial to make sure employees know that their performance matters. It gives them a sense of meaning. I'm part of the bigger picture. What I do matters from an organizational standpoint, as well as a personal and team standpoint. Another one that's so important is developing growing people. We've said that before, but let me get a little bit more in detail. We want to develop people's skills, their knowledge and abilities, so they can do their current job better. But we also, if we're doing effective performance management, you want to be looking at their careers. Where are they going in the organization? The more we develop and grow our people, the more likely they'll stay with us because they have a future with us and they see career growth. Another one is to provide data for the organization. There's a number of things that we need to provide and we need to use as organizations. The first one is overall workforce planning. We need to know what our workforce population looks like, the age, where they're at on the performance management. We need to know what our people are doing and where they fit into the overall scheme. It can be used aggregately for training. If a majority of our people need training on, say, project management, we will develop those programs from a corporate standpoint. If we're doing some changes, like, for example, say we're going to be doing a lot of acquisitions as an organization, we might want to have some change management training that everybody will need to be effective. Then it's just development. How do we not only think about what are the skills my people need today to do their jobs well, but how am I going to grow them for the future and enhance their skill set so they can keep contributing at a high level. And another example would be succession planning. As our people move through the system and retire, we need to make sure we have people in place for business continuity. All these are reasons for the data being necessary for future growth in the organization. Differentiating performance. This is one of my favorite ones. So many organizations don't rate people accurately. or they rate them all the same. A good performance management system needs to have the appraisal process accurately rate your people. You want to be able to distinguish between the good, the mediocre, and the poor ones. When we do this, we can also be more effective in how do we help them get better, or how do we keep the good ones growing. Legal documentation. This is one I have a lot of experience with, the good and the bad. Let me tell you a quick story. Legal documentation is important to make sure we accurately reflect the employee's performance. If we don't, and something goes awry, we have a termination, these documents are subpoenable and can end up in court. If I terminate someone and they file for a wrongful discharge, first thing I'm going to subpoena as a lawyer, and this has been our experience in HR, are there records for their performance appraisals. They want to know what kind of employee they were. And if they were all good for the last, say, 3 to 5 years, it's going to be hard to explain why all of a sudden they were no longer any good. This will get you in legal trouble. It's tempting to write up a review that sounds favorable so you don't hurt their feelings, but it can come back to bite you. Or as the phrase goes, no good deed will go unpunished. Administrative. This is the employee file. You need the records in the employee file for a number of reasons. Could be eventually someone wants to know about promotion, transfer. I want to find out what kind of employees I'm getting. Maybe it's a reference check and I want to be able to tell a little bit about the employee. So we need the paperwork in the employee file. Data for rewards. We said before that it's not about the rewards, but when there's a rewards to be given, it will end up looking at people's performance, and that'll determine the size, perhaps, of the reward, type of reward, and a number of things. So you do need this data on file so it can transfer into compensation. And that will be discussed more in the upcoming sessions on rewards. Let me briefly summarize the 7 steps we just talked about. 1, ensure performance matters by aligning missions with performance. This gives the meaning for the employee stronger performance. 2nd, develop and grow people's skills, knowledge, and abilities, but don't forget about their careers. So many people have told me, yeah, they develop my skills for my current job, but they don't care about growing my career. This is highly motivating people and can possibly impact retention. Provides data for management, primarily in the area of workforce planning, training, and development. As we said, this helps make large decisions on an aggregate level. Differentiate performance. We want to know who our top talent are, our average talent underperformers, so we can make the appropriate performance decisions to improve their performance. Legal documentation. We talked about the story of don't fall to the temptation of being nice on the review. Give accurate data because it is a legal document and can end up in the court of law. Administrative, the employee file. Make sure you have it in there for future decisions, and people can make better decisions with that data. And lastly, provide data for rewards. When it comes time for any increases, typically we look at the performance reviews for that data. Let me leave you with this last slide of design elements. Just some tips I think that'll help for you as you look at designing a program. First one is always reflect the organizational strategy. This is the starting point for everything. If you don't have a strategy and that alignment that we've talked so much about, you're started off on the wrong foot. Employee performance clearly should be connected with the goals and mission. This goes back to alignment, but also back to meaning and purpose. Top management buy-in. We haven't talked about this, but typically if the top management is on a board, you will have at best a mediocre system. I worked in organizations where the top management didn't buy in, and the managers knew this, so their commitment was much smaller. If you really want to be effective, make sure you have your top management on board. Top management must also communicate all the way to the front line. I see this violated so many times. We all think that they will know it. We put out a memo, perhaps an email, and everybody's just going to buy into it. It needs to be communicated, the importance, all the way to the front line. There's an old phrase I once heard that our front line is directly related to our bottom line. So we want all of our people at all levels engaged in this process. Clearly differentiate performance. We've hit this a little bit, but that's so crucial. Anytime you don't do that, people will perceive as unfair, and they don't work as hard because it doesn't matter what I do, we all get the same rating. Comprehensive. One of the things I've seen that often people want to overlook is it should be at all levels. Yeah, it's good for the front line, maybe the entry-level managers, but the senior managers really don't need this. It should be done at all levels. Everybody needs development, and everybody needs the growth opportunities, and everybody should be on record. And if nothing else, it's walking the talk. It shows the top management of buy-in. It should be transparent, and employees should understand it. Everybody should know how the system works. It's sort of like if I can use an educational example, if I was doing a class and no one knew how I graded and what you need to get a good grade, it was not transparent, it'd be difficult to really understand what I have to do to succeed. Employees need to know this too. And we will talk about that in future sessions about some tools that you can use to make sure people understand what their expectations are for their performance. And last, oversight. Any organization I've worked with, we've always built in the oversight. And by that I mean managers should look at it carefully before they submit their reviews. HR, in my organizations, we've always reviewed these to make sure that there's consistency across divisions and with managers. Many times we have some managers that, again, were inconsistent. They might have rater bias, which we'll talk about later. And finally, they also will put things in, quite frankly, that may not be very advisably from a legal standpoint. So we always jokingly said that the HR oversight is really to make sure we don't put anything illegal in there. So these are some design elements that you should be incorporating into your performance plans if you're going to have effective long-term performance management.
So next, learning outcomes. We have dimensions of performance management. So in here, there are 7 important dimensions: result and output, input, time, focus, quality, cost, and output. So this involves thinking through various facts of performance, identifying critical dimensions of performance, planning, reviewing, developing, and enhancing performance and related competencies. So performance has many dimensions. So we have dimension number 1, result and output. So the most acceptable and measurable dimension of performance is result and output. This describes the conditions of inputs, which included raw material, working conditions, process capabilities, and talent of employees in the final form of product or service. So it is necessary to plan all their performance activities in a scientific and systematic manner so that the desired result or output may be obtained. So next dimension, we have input. So this dimension deals with the activities to be accomplished by the employee. So performance can be achieved if the nature of inputs can be managed without mistakes. Because performance is a function of 3 sets of factors: the ability, motivation, and organizational support. So if anyone among these 3 factors is less, the performance is likely to be poor. So we have here the equation: employee competence plus employee motivation plus organizational support equals employee performance. So the employee is continuously adding new capabilities in terms of skills, knowledge, and attitude to get work done in new or better ways and building for the future. So the company recognizes employees who produce work without the need for extensive supervision. So this requires a very reasonable level of support. Next, we have dimension number 3, time. Time is a very precious and very important dimension of performance. So in the current scenario of world, or in these times, the performance management is time-bound. Otherwise, the survival of organization is not possible in the future. So performance of an employee in relation to a given role during particular period of time under the set of circumstances operating at that point of time. Therefore, time may become the target. So next, we have dimension number 4, focus. So performance also has a focus dimension. So for example, in case of sales, profits, and new areas, focus means attention, not only on own activities, but should also keep close watch on related activities. So the employee has an overall work style which is effective and productive in terms of time management, setting priorities, and following up on commitments. So next we have the dimension number 5, quality. So quality is not destination but a journey. So quality refers to doing the things right from the first time rather than making and correcting mistakes in order to achieve a total customer satisfaction. So this means quality is conformance to customer requirements, not goodness. So higher is the quality, greater is the satisfaction for our customers. So it is the responsibility of each and every employee as well as management to build a quality standard which provides a reasonable customer satisfaction at economical cost. So quality is the core dimension of performance management. So next we have dimension number 6. Dimension number 6, cost. So the ultimate principle of purchasing is the low cost with best quality. So therefore, cost effectiveness is another dimension of performance management. So it implies the capacity of a business unit to produce a given commodity at a lower cost through more effective utilization of existing resources. So it is the process of cost reduction by improving efficiency for our operations. So next we have dimension number 7, output. So in here, output relationships and analysis is very relevant and essential to understand this input and output relationship and analysis. So the purpose of input-output analysis is to find out the interdependencies and complexities of the economy in order to determine and conditions for maintaining balance between demand and supply. It describes the inputs required to produce the outputs of different sectors of the economy. So this also involves the study of exchange of goods and services among industries. So the performance appraisal is part of performance management because the moment assessing process is started, there is an appraisal taking place. So therefore, performance appraisal is static in nature, where performance management is a dynamic process. So performance management with performance appraisal should lead to increased performance. The effort should be to make the performance management process more effective and productive using the appraisal system. So that would be all for my topic, and thank you.